The kitchen smelled of basil and regret, a strange cocktail that hit me the moment I stepped through Ethan's door. My heart was already racing, not from the crisp October air outside, but from the weight of a secret I'd carried for years. Tonight, I thought, might be the night it all unravels. I was wrong about how it would happen. Ethan stood by the counter, his brown hair a mess under the glow of a single bulb, flowers smudged on his cheek like a painter's careless stroke. He was trying to make pizza from scratch, a ridiculous idea for a guy who once burned instant noodles. I laughed when he invited me over, thinking it was just another of his impulsive plans. We'd been friends since high school, two misfits in a small Ohio town where everyone knew your business before you did. Ethan, with his easy grin and endless dreams of escaping to New York, was the only one who made this place bearable. But lately, something had shifted. His glances lingered too long. His jokes carried an edge of something unspoken. I felt it too, a pull I couldn't name, like a tide dragging me toward a shore I wasn't ready to reach. "Lucas, you gonna help or just stand there judging my dough skills?" Ethan teased, tossing a ball of dough in the air. It wobbled, nearly hitting the ceiling, and we both burst out laughing. His green eyes sparkled, and for a moment, I forgot the knot in my chest. I forgot the whispers at church, the way my dad's jaw tightened when I mentioned Ethan, the way this town seemed to shrink around us. I stepped closer, grabbing a rolling pin. "You're hopeless," I said, nudging his shoulder. The contact sent a jolt through me, and I prayed he didn't notice my hands tremble. We worked side by side, spreading sauce, sprinkling cheese, the silence between us heavy with things neither of us dared say. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to confess that every time he smiled, it felt like the world made sense. But fear was a cage, and I'd lived in it too long. The pizza went into the oven, and Ethan leaned against the counter, wiping his hands on a towel. "You ever think about leaving this place?" he asked, his voice softer now, almost hesitant. "Like for real, not just dreaming." I swallowed hard. "Every day. But where would I go? This is home, Ethan, even if it suffocates me." He looked at me then, really looked like he was seeing past the walls I'd built. "You don't have to stay stuck, Lucas. You're worth more than this town's judgment." My breath caught. He knew. He had to know. The air felt electric, charged with a truth we'd both been dodging. I opened my mouth to speak, but the oven timer buzzed, shattering the moment. Ethan grinned, breaking the tension, and pulled the pizza out. It was lopsided, half-burnt, but we laughed anyway, slicing it up and sitting on the floor like kids. We ate in silence, the kind that feels like it's holding its breath. Then he set his slice down, his face suddenly serious. "Lucas, I need to tell you something." My heart stopped. I knew that tone. It was the same one I'd practiced in the mirror 100 times, trying to find the courage to say words that could ruin everything. I nodded, unable to speak, my pulse hammering in my ears. He stood, pacing the small kitchen, his hands fidgeting. "I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I can't keep pretending it's not real." He stopped, turning to face me, his eyes burning with something raw. "I'm in love with you, Lucas. I've been in love with you since we were 16, sneaking beers by the creek, talking about stupid dreams." The world tilted. My mind screamed to run, to laugh it off, to do anything but face this. But my heart, my stupid, reckless heart, kept me rooted to the spot. "Ethan," I whispered, my voice barely audible. He didn't let me finish. He crossed the room in 2 steps and dropped to his knees in front of me, his hands gripping mine. "I know it's scary. I know this town will tear us apart if they find out. But I can't keep hiding who I am. Not from you." Tears stung my eyes. I wanted to tell him I felt the same, that I'd love him through every late-night talk, every shared secret. But the fear was louder, a chorus of every warning I'd ever heard. My parents, the church, the whispers in the diner. "Ethan, we can't," I said, my voice breaking. "You know what they'll do to us." His grip tightened. "I don't care about them. I care about you. Tell me you don't feel this, and I'll let it go. I'll never bring it up again." I couldn't lie. Not to him. But I couldn't speak either. The kitchen felt too small, the walls closing in. I pulled my hands away and stood, my chest tight. "I need time," I said, barely above a whisper. I grabbed my jacket and walked out, the cold night air hitting me like a slap. As I walked home, his words echoed in my head. I'd spent years hiding, pretending, convincing myself I could outrun who I was. But Ethan had torn that lie apart with a single confession. And now, I had to decide, run from him or run toward the only truth that ever mattered. The next morning, the sky was gray, mirroring the storm in my head. I hadn't slept, replaying Ethan's words, his eyes, the way his hands felt in mine. I wanted to go back, to tell him I loved him too, but fear was a chain around my ankles, each step toward his house heavier than the last. I avoided him all day, skipping the diner where we usually grab coffee. Instead, I walked to the old creek, the one we used to escape to as kids. The water was low now, barely a trickle, but it still felt like a sanctuary. I sat on a rock, staring at the ripples, trying to make sense of the chaos inside me. Loving Ethan wasn't the problem. It was the world we lived in, a small, judgmental town where being different was a sin preached from every pulpit. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Can we talk? I'm sorry if I freaked you out." I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the reply button. I wanted to say everything. How I'd loved him since the day he punched Tommy Reed for calling me a freak in 9th grade. How every laugh we shared felt like a promise. But I typed nothing. I wasn't ready. By evening, guilt drove me to his door. He opened it before I could knock, like he'd been waiting. His face was a mix of hope and worry, his green eyes searching mine. "You okay?" he asked, stepping aside to let me in. I nodded, though it was a lie. The kitchen still smelled faintly of pizza, a reminder of last night's confession. "I'm sorry I ran," I said, my voice shaky. I don't know how to do this." Ethan leaned against the counter, giving me space. "You don't have to have it all figured out, Lucas. I just needed you to know the truth. I couldn't keep pretending. I'm scared," I admitted, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "My dad, the church, you know how they are. If they find out, they'll make our lives hell." He stepped closer, his voice steady. "I know, but we can't let them decide who we are. I've spent years hiding, Lucas. I'm done. I want to live, not just survive." His words hit like a punch. I've been surviving too, tiptoeing around my truth, afraid of what it would cost. But looking at Ethan, I saw something else, a future where I didn't have to hide. It was terrifying, but it was also the first time I felt alive. "I love you," I said, the words tumbling out, raw and real. His eyes widened, a smile breaking across his face like dawn. He reached for me, but before he could, the doorbell rang, sharp and jarring. It was Sarah, Ethan's sister, her face pale. "Lucas, your dad's looking for you. He's pissed. Someone saw you leave here last night, and they're talking." My stomach dropped. The town's gossip mill was ruthless, and my dad was its biggest fan. He'd always been strict, his faith a rigid cage, but this was different. If he suspected anything, he'd never let it go. "I'll come with you," Ethan said, grabbing his jacket. "No," I said quickly. "I need to handle this alone." He looked like he wanted to argue, but he nodded. "I'm here, Lucas. Whatever happens." I left, my heart pounding. The walk to my house felt like a march to judgment. When I stepped inside, my dad was waiting, his face a mask of fury. "Where were you last night?" he demanded. "With Ethan," I said, my voice steady despite the fear. His eyes narrowed. "People are saying things, Lucas, things I don't want to believe. Tell me they're wrong." I wanted to lie, to keep the peace, but Ethan's courage burned in me. "They're not wrong," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The silence that followed was deafening. My dad's face hardened, and I knew nothing would ever be the same. The fallout was swift and brutal. By morning, the whispers had spread like wildfire. At the diner, eyes followed me, conversations hushing as I passed. My dad hadn't spoken to me since last night, his silence louder than any sermon. My mom tried to mediate, her voice soft but strained. "Lucas, just be careful," she said, her eyes pleading. But careful wasn't an option anymore. I met Ethan at the creek, our old refuge. He looked tired, his usual spark dimmed. "They're talking about me too," he said, kicking a pebble into the water. "My boss pulled me aside today. Said I should keep my personal life quiet if I want to keep my job." Anger flared in me. Ethan worked at the hardware store, the only place in town that paid decently. Losing it would crush his dreams of leaving. "This is bullshit," I said, my voice shaking. "We didn't do anything wrong." He gave me a sad smile. "Since when does that matter here?" We sat in silence, the weight of the town's judgment pressing down. I wanted to fight, to scream that we deserved to love who we wanted. But the reality was uglier. This wasn't just about gossip. It was about survival in a place that didn't forgive difference. That night, Ethan came over, slipping through the back door like a thief. My parents were at church, leaving the house eerily quiet. We sat on my bed, the space between us charged with fear and defiance. "We could leave," he said suddenly. "Pack a bag, get in my truck and go. New York, California, anywhere but here." The idea was intoxicating, but it terrified me. And do what? We've got no money, no plan. My dad would disown me. Ethan took my hand, his touch steadying me. We'd figured out. Together. I wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at me. I'd seen what happened to others who dared to be different here, shunned, broken, driven out. But then Ethan leaned in, his lips brushing mine, and for a moment, the world fell away. The kiss was soft, tentative, then desperate, like we were stealing time from a world that wanted to tear us apart. The sound of the front door slamming jolted us apart. My dad's voice boomed through the house. "Lucas!" Panic seized me. Ethan squeezed my hand. "Stay calm," he whispered, but his eyes betrayed his fear. My dad stormed into my room, his face a storm cloud. "What the hell is this?" he roared, seeing Ethan. "Get out of my house." "Dad, please," I started, but he cut me off. "You're choosing this? Over your family? Your faith?" His voice cracked, not with anger, but with something worse, disappointment. Ethan stood, facing him. "Mr. Carter, I love your son. I'm not ashamed of that." My dad's fist clenched, and for a moment, I thought he'd hit him. But he just pointed to the door. "Get out. Now." Ethan looked at me, his eyes pleading for me to stand with him. But I froze, torn between the boy I loved and the family I couldn't lose. He left without another word, and the silence he left behind was suffocating. The days that followed were a blur of tension. My dad barely looked at me. My mom tiptoed around us both, and the town's gossip grew vicious. Someone spray-painted a slur on Ethan's truck, and his boss cut his hours. I wanted to fight for him, for us, but every time I tried to speak, fear choked me. I saw Ethan at the diner, sitting alone in a corner booth. His face lit up when he saw me, but it faded when he noticed my hesitation. "You're pulling away," he said quietly, his voice heavy with hurt. "I'm trying," I said, sitting across from him. "But it's not just about us. It's my family, Ethan. They're all I've got." He reached for my hand under the table, hidden from prying eyes. "You've got me. Isn't that enough?" It should have been. But the weight of expectation, my dad's, the town's, my own, felt like drowning. I pulled my hand back, hating myself for it. "I need time," I said, the same weak excuse I'd given before. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Time won't change this place, Lucas. It won't change them, but it might change us." He was right, and I hated it. I left the diner, the bell above the door jingling like a warning. That night, I lay awake, torn between two futures, one where I stayed, safe but hollow, and one where I followed Ethan, free but uncertain. The next morning, I found a note slipped under my door. Ethan's handwriting, simple and raw. "Meet me at the creek. Midnight. Please." My heart raced. I knew this was it, a choice I couldn't unmake. At midnight, the creek was silent, the moon casting silver across the water. Ethan was there, his silhouette sharp against the night. "I'm leaving," he said, his voice steady but soft. "Tomorrow. I can't stay here anymore, Lucas. Not like this." My chest tightened. "Where?" "New York. I've got a cousin there who can help me start over. Come with me." I wanted to say yes. I wanted to grab his hand and run, to leave this town and its poison behind. But the thought of my parents, of the life I'd known, held me back. "I can't," I whispered, tears burning my eyes. "Not yet." Ethan's face crumpled, but he nodded. "I love you, Lucas. That won't change. But I can't wait forever." He kissed me then, a goodbye that felt like a wound. When he pulled away, I knew I'd lost something I might never get back. Ethan was gone by morning. His truck was missing, his house dark. The town buzzed with new gossip, but I felt hollow, like I'd carved out a piece of myself and let it drive away. I went to the creek, hoping he'd left something, a note, a sign, but there was nothing but the sound of water and my own regret. Weeks passed, and the silence between me and my dad grew colder. My mom tried to bridge the gap, but even she couldn't reach me. I stopped going to church, tired of the stairs and sermons that felt like shackles. Every night I thought of Ethan, his laugh, his courage, the way he'd knelt in that kitchen and changed everything. One day, a letter arrived, no return address. Inside was a single page in Ethan's handwriting. "I'm okay. New York is loud, messy, alive. I miss you, but I'm not coming back. You can find me if you're ready." At the bottom was an address. I stared at it for hours, my heart at war with itself. Staying meant safety, but it also meant a life half-lived, shadowed by fear. Leaving meant risking everything for a chance at something real. I made my choice. 6 months later, I stood outside a small apartment in Brooklyn, my bag slung over my shoulder, my heart pounding. The city was overwhelming, a chaos of noise and light, but it felt like freedom. I knocked, and when Ethan opened the door, his eyes widened, then softened. "You came," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I couldn't stay," I said, stepping closer. "Not without you." He pulled me into a hug, and for the first time, I felt whole. The town, the fear, the judgment, they were still there, but they couldn't touch us anymore. We built something new, something ours. That night, we ordered pizza, laughing as we ate on the floor of his tiny apartment. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And as I looked at Ethan, his smile brighter than the city lights outside, I knew I'd made the right choice. Love wasn't just a moment in a kitchen. It was a life we'd fight for, together.